Bantam Doubleday Dell Audio Publishing presents Actual Innocence, 5 Days to Execution and Other Dispatches from the Wrongly Convicted by Jim Dwyer, Peter Neufeld, and Barry Scheck. This is a work of nonfiction. The author's descriptions of events are based on interviews, the personal experiences of one or more of the authors, court transcripts, and legal filings. We also relied on works of legal and social science scholarship. We used no anonymous sources. Following the convention of American journalism, we have not named the living victims of sexual assault, other than those who have chosen to speak in public. Other than in this note, the authors refer to themselves in the third person, one at a time, as Barry, Peter, and Jim. The phone rings. His mother and aunt have gone to bed. Dennis Fritz stares at a movie, though he doesn't know its name or plot, and is ready for sleep just as soon as he can hoist himself from couch to bed. It is a spring night in Kansas City, and the windows of Lister Avenue are open to the cool air, and curtains skip along the breeze. A jangling phone at that hour in this house could only be a wrong number. "Hello?" says a woman. "Is Dennis Fritz there?" "Yes," says Fritz. "Is this Dennis Fritz?" she asks. "Yes, it is," he says, and his soft, Western-accented voice is answered by a dial tone. The woman had hung up. A wrong number, he thinks for an instant, then realizes that made no sense. Dennis Fritz walks back to the sofa and plops again in front of the television. He is 37 years old, a handsome man, his hair neatly trimmed and piled back. This gives a clear view of his finely featured face, unlined skin, and the blue eyes that seem intelligent and generous. His compact body probably would be fit even if he did not work at construction and home repair in southeastern Oklahoma. This week he has come to Kansas City to do a paint job for his mother and aunt. The promotions for that night's TV news are playing, but nothing grabs Dennis. He stands, stretches, yawns, and then hears the car doors. He glances past the curtains and sees a small army of police officers fanning across his yard and taking up combat positions. They must have rolled up silently. Dressed in sniper and SWAT team gear, they focus for some reason on his mother's house. He opens the door and steps across the threshold. 2 men in plain clothes materialize from the shadows. "Dennis Fritz," said one, and now Fritz could make him out, placing the face of a detective from the little town where he had lived, Ada, Oklahoma. Whatever in the world was he doing in Kansas City? "Yes," says Dennis. "Raise your hands. We have a warrant for your arrest." "What?" asks Fritz. "You're charged with murder in the first degree and rape in the death of Deborah Sue Carter," says the detective. As he feels them cuffing him behind his back and sees the snipers uncoil from their firing position, the name of Deborah Carter moves through his mind. The girl had been killed, it must have been 4 or 5 years earlier in Ada, and half the men in town were questioned at the time, Dennis included. It had been an unpleasant episode, but a necessary one, he had supposed at the time, and he had thought little about it in the years since. Now the police had emerged from a spring night to accuse him of murder. A moment before he had been ready for bed, stretching his arms. Now he had fallen into an unreal dream. He left his mother's home in handcuffs on that spring night in 1987. He would not return until the spring of 1999. Before he took up construction, Dennis Fritz had been a high school science teacher, a single parent, an amateur musician, a thoughtful man. Nothing about him suggested that he would be plucked from a home in the middle of the country, singled out as a murderer who carried out his gruesome business in especially hideous fashion, and sent to prison for the rest of his life. Dennis Fritz looked like he could have been any one of hundreds of millions of ordinary American citizens. In fact, he was. He, too, was an innocent man. On another spring evening, 12 years later, the matter of Dennis Fritz crossed the desk of a senior executive at a major television network. The network's primetime news magazine show had been collecting footage on Fritz for nearly a year, as it grew more likely that he would be set free. The executive was called by Fritz's lawyer in early April 1999. "Dennis is getting out a week from Wednesday," said the attorney. "We're going to pass," said the executive. "After all you've put into it?" asked the lawyer. "I'm really sorry, but my bosses think there are too many of these stories going around," said the newsman. "He's just another one of these innocent guys getting out." Not long ago, to claim that an innocent person had been imprisoned was audacious, even risky, a proposition that was close to unprovable. In 1992, Barry and Peter dropped legal papers with an editor at a New York City newspaper. They said they had proof that a Long Island, New York truck driver had done 11 years hard time for rapes that he did not commit. New tests, not available at the time of his trial, showed that the rapist had one kind of DNA and the prisoner another. The papers landed with Jim, who did not know Barry or Peter, but knew that no sane lawyer would try to bluff such a story. 9 months later, that man walked free from a courtroom on Long Island. And word of this new DNA test moved from cell to cell block, from tier to prison yard, from the weekend visiting room to the chartered bus rides home, from cities to states, coast to coast. Innocent people in jails lunged at this story. They wrote to Barry and Peter and asked them to make it happen again. Other defense lawyers called to ask for help. So did mothers and fathers, brothers and sisters. As the letters and requests piled up, Barry and Peter decided to give this paper pyramid a name. They called it the Innocence Project. And in 2 out of every 3 cases where the old evidence could be found, the Innocence Project clients were exonerated. In what seems like a flash, DNA tests performed during the last decade of the century not only have freed 64 individuals, but have exposed a system of law that has been far too complacent about its fairness and accuracy. What matters most is not how these people got out of jail, but how they got into it. Now the fabric of false guilt is laid bare, and the same vivid threads bind a wealthy Oklahoma businessman and a Maryland fisherman. Sometimes eyewitnesses make mistakes. Snitches tell lies. Confessions are coerced or fabricated. Racism trumps the truth. Lab tests are rigged. Defense lawyers sleep. Prosecutors lie. Some 6,000 people have been sent to death row since 1976. As of this writing, 80 of them have been cleared through a variety of means, 64 of them through DNA tests. Some people think that an error rate of 1% is acceptable for the death penalty, notes Kevin Doyle, the capital defender for the state of New York. But if you went to the FAA and asked them to approve an airplane, and you said, "Oh, by the way, on every 100th landing, it causes or almost causes fatalities," people would say you were nuts. The courts can minimize the risks of persecuting the innocent without undermining and actually improving the prosecution of the guilty. But that requires a rigorous inquiry into the mistakes revealed by DNA tests. And Justice Learned Hand wrote in 1923, "Our procedure has always been haunted by the ghost of the innocent man convicted. It is an unreal dream." Today, those ghosts walk the land, but Hand's unreal dream is costing little sleep. The innocent neither count nor are they counted. Every unit of government, from the smallest locality to the U.S. Justice Department, totes crimes, complaints, warrants, arrests, indictments, pleas, dispositions, trials, jury trials, judge trials, verdicts, sentences, paroles, appeals, opinions. An entire division of the federal government tracks the quantity of felonies. Many states have similar machinery. Yet not one number is assigned to represent the distinct matter of the innocent person. No one has the job of figuring out what went wrong or who did wrong. No account is taken of the innocent person, wrongly convicted, ultimately exonerated. The moment has come to do so. Trapped in a wilderness of wrong places, inmate 85A6097 howled, body and soul. His skin erupted, his teeth rotted. His feet grew warts too big for his shoes. His lungs flooded with pneumonia. His scalp dried to sand. His hemorrhoids burned so hot that only a surgeon's knife could cool them. He was often cranky and defiant with the prison staff. So whatever time he did not pass at sick call or in a hospital usually was spent in a disciplinary program. Marion Coakley had been a young man when he entered prison to serve a 15-year sentence for rape. And everyone who met him agreed that he was a simple soul and a difficult convict.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?